and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today I am going to discuss Delhi edition dated 11th April 2018 of The Hindu. So let's begin. The first important article that we will discuss today appears on page 5 and it reads, All Eyes on ISRO's Navigation Satellite. This article talks about the IRNSS 1I satellite, which will be launched on April 12 by the Indian Space Research Organisation at its Satish Dhawan Space Centre, Sriharikota. This topic forms a part of GS Paper 3 under the heading Science and Technology, its developments and applications, and the achievements in science and technology and development in new technology. In the past, many such questions have been asked in the prelims exam, and we will cover this topic today as well from the upcoming prelims exam point of view. So the IRNSS stands for the Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, and under this IRNSS 1I will be launched by ISRO on 12th of April. This IRNSS will be a set of satellites which together can provide India a regional positioning system which will be similar to the GPS system. This satellite will transmit signals for the accurate determination of position, navigation and time. According to the ISRO website, this system is designed to give position accuracy better than 20 meters to its users in its primary coverage area. Also, it can service regions extending up to 1500 kilometers around India's boundary. So I hope till now you have understood some key points about IRNSS, which stands for Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, and under this the IRNSS 1I will be launched by ISRO soon. Basically, this IRNSS is a set of satellites which can provide a regional positioning system in India. It can transmit signals for the determination of position, navigation and time. This system is designed to give a position accuracy of better than 20 meters to its users, and it can also extend to up to 1500 kilometers around India's boundary. Next, we will understand about how many IRNSS satellites have been launched till now. So currently, there are 7 IRNSS satellites, that is from 1A to 1G in the orbit. Of these, the satellites A, B, F and G are placed in a geosynchronous orbit, which means that they seem to be at a fixed location above the Earth and they orbit along with the Earth. And the remaining C, D and E satellites are placed in a geostationary orbit. This means that they seem to be at a fixed location above the Earth along the equator and orbit along with the Earth. So now we know how many IRNSS satellites have already been launched. You should also understand what are the applications of IRNSS. Firstly, the IRNSS satellites will help in land, marine and aerial navigation. Secondly, the data from these satellites can be used to provide drivers with visual and voice navigation assistance. And thirdly, these satellites can also help in disaster management. So from this discussion, we have understood that there are currently 7 IRNSS satellites from 1A to 1G in the orbit. Of these, 4 are in the geosynchronous orbit and 3 are in the geostationary orbit. We have also discussed the applications of IRNSS, that they can be used in land, marine and aerial navigation, and they can provide the drivers with visual and voice navigation assistance, and they can also help in disaster management. Lastly, we will understand some of the specifications of the IRNSS 1I satellite. The IRNSS 1I satellite will be the 8th satellite in the ring of navigation with Indian constellation. The weight of the IRNSS 1 satellite will be 1425 kg and it will be launched on a PSLV rocket in its extended XL version. Thirdly, the IRNSS 1I satellite will be placed in a sub-geosynchronous transfer orbit. Like all other IRNSS satellites, IRNSS 1I will also carry 2 payloads. These are the navigation payload, which will transmit signals for determining position, velocity and time, and the ranging payload, which will determine frequency range of the satellite. So from the exam point of view, you should also remember the specifications of the IRNSS 1I satellite, that it will be the 8th satellite in the ring of navigation with Indian constellation satellites. It will be launched on a PSLV rocket and it will be placed in a sub-geosynchronous transfer orbit. It will carry two payloads just like the other IRNSS satellites. These are the navigation payload, which will transmit signals for determining position, velocity and time, and the ranging payload, which will determine frequency range of the satellite. So with the help of this discussion, we have understood many key points about the IRNSS 1I satellite and about the entire range of IRNSS satellites, and hence this becomes important from the upcoming prelims exam point of view. With this, we will move on to the next article. Next, we will discuss this article that appears on page 11. NHRC issues notice to UP government on custodial death. So this article mentions the term NHRC or National Human Rights Commission, and it is an important body and various questions on it have been asked previously in both prelims as well as mains exam. This topic forms a part of GS paper 2 under the heading Statutory, Regulatory and various quasi-judicial bodies. So we will discuss various key points about the National Human Rights Commission and try to solve these questions as well. Firstly, we will talk about the Constitution of NHRC. The Constitution of NHRC is provided by the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993. This act also provides for the constitution of state human rights commissions. Next, we will discuss the membership of NHRC. So the NHRC shall consist of a chairperson who has been a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, one member who has been a Judge of Supreme Court, one member who has been a Chief Justice of High Court, and two persons having knowledge and practical experience in matters of human rights. Next, we will talk about the appointment of the chairman and the members of NHRC. The chairperson and the members of NHRC shall be appointed by the President by warrant under his hand and seal. And these members shall be appointed on the recommendations of a committee consisting of the Prime Minister, Speaker of the House of the People, Minister in charge of the Ministry of Home Affairs, Leader of Opposition in the House of People, Leader of Opposition in the Council of States, and Deputy Chairman of the Council of States. So till now we have understood that the Constitution of NHRC and State Human Rights Commission is provided by the Protection of Human Rights Act 1993. Its membership includes a chairperson who has been a Chief Justice of Supreme Court and 4 other members. Also, we have discussed the appointment of the members of NHRC who are appointed by the President based on the recommendations of a selection committee, which include these following members. We should also know about the removal process of the chairperson and members of NHRC. They can resign the office by putting a notice addressed to the President of India, and they can also be removed on the grounds of misbehavior or incapacity only after an inquiry held by the Supreme Court. Next, we will discuss the main functions of the National Human Rights Commission. The main functions of the NHRC include inquiry into the violations of human rights, intervention in proceedings involving human rights violations pending before a court of law, jail visits to ensure proper treatment, reformation, or protection of those languished in jails, review safeguards for the protection of human rights and recommend measures for their effective implementation, study the treaties and international instruments of human rights and make suitable recommendations, spread human rights literacy among various sections of the society and promote awareness, and lastly, encourage the efforts of non-governmental organizations and institutions working in the field of human rights. Lastly, we should also know the powers of the NHRC related to enquiry. The NHRC, for the purpose of enquiry, shall have all the powers of a civil court regarding summoning and enforcing the attendance of witnesses and examining them on oath, discovery and production of any document, receiving evidence on affidavits, and issuing commissions for the examination of witnesses or documents. So with the help of this discussion, we have understood key points about the constitution of NHRC, about the membership, process of appointment and removal of the members of NHRC, about the main functions of NHRC and the powers related to inquiry. Now if we come back to this question that was asked in prelims, according to the National Human Rights Commission Act 1993, who amongst the following can be its chairman? And from our discussion, we know that the correct answer will be option C, that is only a retired Chief Justice of India. Also in the mains exam, questions have been asked on NHRC such as NHRC in India can be most effective when its tasks are adequately supported by other mechanisms that ensure the accountability of a government. In light of the above observation, assess the role of NHRC as an effective complement to the judiciary and other institutions in promoting and protecting human rights standards. So the students should read about NHRC from both prelims as well as mains exam point of view. With this, we will move on to the next article. The next important article appears on page 9 and it reads, "A Register by the People." Now this article talks about the draft National Forest Policy and it forms a part of GS paper 3 under the heading Conservation, Environmental Pollution and Degradation, Environmental Impact Assessment. So before talking about the issues that have been raised in this article, let us understand a few key points first about the draft National Forest Policy 2018. So the National Forest Policy will be an overarching policy for forest management and its main aim will be to bring minimum of 1/3 of India's total geographical area under forest or tree cover. So this draft policy talks about private participation in forest management. Here, PPP models will be used for undertaking afforestation and reforestation activities in degraded forest areas. Also, the draft policy says that the finances required for the management of forests will be acquired through a compensatory afforestation fund which is being transferred to the states, and it would be a major source of funds for taking up afforestation and rehabilitation works. We should also briefly distinguish between the objectives of the different forest policies that have been announced in India till now. So the forest policy in 1952 stressed on production and revenue generation aspect of forests, whereas the forest policy in 1988 aimed at ensuring environmental stability and maintenance of ecological balance. And now in 2018, as per the new draft forest policy, its aim is to safeguard the ecological and livelihood security of people of present and future generations based on sustainable management of the forests. This policy also emphasizes on climate change concerns into forest management. So we have understood all the key points about Draft National Forest Policy 2018. Its main aim is to bring minimum of 1/3 of India's total geographical area under forest or tree cover. It talks about private participation in forest management, and for this purpose it emphasizes the use of PPP models. Also, for arranging finances for forest management, a compensatory afforestation fund will be used. Also, in comparison to the 1952 and 1988 forest policies, the 2018 draft forest policy talks about ecological and livelihood security of people of present and future generations based on sustainable management, and it also emphasizes on climate change. Now let's come to some of the issues that the author has talked about in this article. So the author says that as per the State of Forest report, the forest cover had increased in India by 0.21% between 2015 to 2017. However, the author also says that a large portion of forest land has also been legally diverted during this period. So this means that even if the forest cover is being increased, it is simultaneously being lost. Hence, the author has stressed to build a mechanism to calculate the actual forest cover. and this should form the basis of the forest policy. Further, the author says that as per the Biological Diversity Act 2002, it is required to set up a biodiversity management committee in each local body. This committee will prepare people's biodiversity registers, which are a complete documentation of the biodiversity in an area. These people biodiversity registers will play an important role to understand the overlap of cultural and natural biodiversity. For example, several endemic bird areas in the Western Ghats are those where tribals like Todas live. Hence, the author has emphasized the role of these people's biodiversity registers. So with the help of this discussion, we understand the issues that have been raised by the author in this article, that the forest cover has increased by 0.27% between 2015 to 17, but at the same time, a large portion has also been legally diverted. Hence, there is a need to build a mechanism to calculate the actual forest cover. Also, the author has stressed the importance of the people's biodiversity registers, which play an important role to understand the overlap of cultural and natural biodiversity. Since this is a new draft forest policy, therefore you should read it from both prelims as well as mains exam point of view. With this, we will move on to the next article. Next, we will discuss this article that appears on page 4 of the Delhi Metro section, and it reads, Waste Pickers Hold Public Hearing, Raise Issues. So with the help of this article, we will try to understand about the Solid Waste Management Rules 2016, and in the UPSC syllabus, this topic will form a part of both urban governance and environment. Also, we will discuss a concept of waste to wealth, which will fall under economic development section because it deals with the aspects of energy. So the solid waste management rules of 2016 have replaced the earlier municipal solid waste management handling rules of 2000. The major difference between the solid waste management rules of 2016 and the earlier rules of 2000 is that the 2016 rules have increased the jurisdiction under solid waste management. So the earlier rules of 2000 were only applicable to the municipal areas, but the new rules have extended it beyond municipal areas, and it has included urban agglomerations, census towns, notified industrial townships, areas under Indian Railways, airports, defense establishments, etc. And why has this jurisdiction been increased? Mainly, it has been increased to achieve the objectives of the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. The second major difference between the rules is the source of segregation. According to the new rules, waste has to be separated at the source itself, meaning from where the waste has been generated. Also, the new rules specify that the source would be divided into 3 categories. These are biodegradable waste, non-biodegradable waste, and domestic waste. Also, under the new system, all hotels and restaurants are required to segregate biodegradable waste and set up a system of collection of waste. Similarly, new townships and group housing societies have been made responsible to develop house waste handling and processing arrangements. So till now we have understood some key points about the solid waste management rules. Firstly, that these rules have replaced the earlier municipal solid waste management handling rules of 2000. These rules have extended the jurisdiction beyond municipal areas to include urban agglomerations, census towns, notified industrial townships, areas under Indian Railways, airports, ports, special economic zones, etc. And all this will help in achieving the objectives of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. Also, the new rules state that there should be a segregation of waste at the source itself. And for this, 3 categories of waste have been decided, which include the biodegradable waste, non-biodegradable waste, and domestic waste. Another concept that has been provided under the new rules of 2016 is the waste to wealth concept. The waste to wealth concept basically means that the conversion of waste would be in the form of resources, and such resources would create wealth. For example, the waste that would be converted into compost can be used as fertilizers, and thereby it will increase the wealth in the form of fertilizer. Lastly, we should know which is the nodal ministry for solid waste management. So the nodal ministry for solid waste management is the Ministry for Urban Development. However, the ministry that has revised the solid waste management rules for 2016 is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So from the exam point of view, you should remember the waste to wealth concept under the solid waste management rules of 2016, that is the conversion of waste to create wealth. Also, the nodal ministry for solid waste management is Ministry for Urban Development, and the revision of these rules has been done by Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Since these rules have been released in 2016, they are important for the upcoming prelims exam, and the student should read this article from the prelims exam point of view. With this, we will move on to the next article. Next, we will discuss this article that appears on page 8, and it reads, A New Beginning with Nepal. This article forms a part of GS paper 2 under the heading India and its Neighborhood Relations, and previously in the mains exam, questions have been asked about India-Nepal relations, such as in what sense is Indo-Nepal cooperation important for both countries' national security, and write a note on weak spots in India-Nepal relations. So this article also talks about a new beginning of relations between India and Nepal. First of all, we should understand why is it being called a new beginning. This is because a new government under the leadership of KP Oli has been elected in Nepal, and the author says that India-Nepal relations might see a change in engagement with the KP Oli government because the current government would be stable to maintain a continued foreign policy. Also, Nepal has had 25 PMs in the last 27 years, abolition of monarchy, emergence of Maoism, etc., which led to short-term foreign policy formulations in Nepal. And these events have helped in a strong electoral victory by KP Oli and public support. Also, KP Oli during the elections focused on anti-Indian politics, but after the elections has shifted to center and de-emphasized its anti-Indian rhetoric. Also, the new government in Nepal is strengthening relations with China in terms of connectivity infrastructure. KP Oli asserted during his recent visit that Nepal will maintain balanced relations with India and China. Also, Nepal will become a part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. So all these points explain the reasons for a new beginning between India and Nepal. That is, the new government under the leadership of KP Oli in Nepal will help to create new beginnings in relations between India and Nepal. Also, the new government will be able to maintain a stable and continued foreign policy. And lastly, the government is trying to maintain balanced relations with India and China. It is strengthening its relations with China in terms of connectivity infrastructure, such as becoming a part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Next, we should also understand the issues that remain to be solved between India and Nepal. The first issue pertains to the review of the 1950 India-Nepal Treaty. Next is the review of the recruitment of Nepali nationals in the Gorkha Regiment of the Indian Army. Thirdly, the return of demonetized notes from Nepal to India remains an issue that needs to be resolved. And the other issues are completion of hydel projects, restarting of SARC process, and river water management. Here, 60% of river Ganga's water comes from Nepal's rivers, and hence river water management is an issue that needs to be resolved between India and Nepal. So we have understood what are the issues that need to be resolved between India and Nepal to strengthen their relations. These are related to the India-Nepal Treaty, about the recruitment of Nepali nationals in Indian Army, about the return of demonetized notes from Nepal to India, completion of hydel projects, restarting of SARC process, and river water management. Lastly, we will understand what is the future roadmap for Indo-Nepal relations as per this article. In order to strengthen the relations between India and Nepal, It is required that there should be effective delivery on pending projects between the two countries. These pending projects include projects like petroleum pipeline projects. Another important factor which is important for the future of Indo-Nepal relations is increase in rail connectivity. And lastly, India should balance Chinese presence by considering Nepal's development needs and India's security needs. So as per the article, the main factors that will influence the future roadmap of relations between India and Nepal depend upon the effective delivery on pending projects, improvement in rail connectivity, and balance of Chinese presence by India by considering Nepal's development needs. This article is mainly important from the mains exam point of view in UPSC, and the student should read it from the mains exam perspective. With this, we come to an end to today's newspaper discussion. Now let's move on to question for the day.